Hi, welcome. Today I want to continue with TPL Dataflow, and I want to focus a little bit on the link to method, which is used to connect one data flow block to another data flow block. So let's get started. So I prepared some starter code so we won't have to type so much. So this is called link to example. So let's just go there and see what's in there. So as you can see here, what I'm doing is first is just getting a consumer block and I give it a name. This is just a name and a method. So let's just see what this consumer block is. Consumer block is basically an action block which takes a type of int, and the action is also pretty straightforward. It does this action. It says consumer, whatever the name is and whatever input it got, and it just prints it and sleeps for that many particular seconds or milliseconds. So that's what this consumer does. So in this example we have one consumer block which is an action block, so that's good. Other thing I've done is a producer block, which is a buffer block, and it also accepts an input. And here I'm linking producer block is linked to the consumer block. So the output of producer block is going into the consumer block, which was the action. And here all I'm doing is in a loop 0 through 9, and I'm just posting it to the producer block or the input block, and if it fails then I write failed post. And at this point we do the producer block completion, and once we do the producer block completion completed, I want to check that the producer block completion continuation. And when we get the task P, I'm just calling a method called print status and giving it the task name and just giving it some name so we know the producer was done or what happened. And same thing with consumer block, we can sing printer P and E. So let's just take a quick look at this print status function. So it's very straightforward. Basically, the normal case is that if the P is faulted, and that can happen if essentially a data flow block can be faulted if it is receiving some kind of an exception, and then it is considered to be complete, but it is in a faulted state. So then I'm doing this print statement. Otherwise, if it's all good, I'm just saying it's done. Here I'm just saying it's faulted. And this is just a way to get some inner exceptions and being able to print out. You don't need to worry too much about this, but you can see that you can, from an aggregate, you can get that information. So as you can see, let's see what happens if I just run this code the way it is right now, and I'm going to clear what I had done before. So let's just say I run this code now. So as you can see, it prints hello TPL, which is basically right here, hello TPL. Then it says producer is done. As you know, producer block is completed here. So completion, it'll call this producer done. And then consumer gets all these 9 messages. But interesting thing here is that we are not really seeing the consumer block being completed. So that is a problem. So this program is kind of stuck waiting for this consumer block to be completed and the whole task flow to be done. So let's just fix that. That's pretty easy to fix. And that's where I come to what I was going to talk about in the link to session here. So when you link to something, you can provide some options. And we are going to provide one of the options which will allow for basically data flow link options. And it's called propagate completion is equal to true. Basically, once the input block is completed, it will propagate that information to the next block in the chain. So that's what this does. So that's one of the options you can use on the link to, and I did this. So let's just see what happens if I run this program now and whether we see the completion of the consumer block or not. So that's good news. Now you can see the consumer one is done. So which is basically a basic way to propagate completion. So there is another option I wanted to talk about here, and I wanted to kind of show you how to experiment with it. So let's just do that, and I'm going to break it into a new line so it's kind of easy to see. And that other option is called max messages. Basically, it means is that over the link, only these many messages can go, and you cannot have more messages than that. And it's obviously a value, so I'm going to put in a value for 4 max messages. And let's say if we just did this, what happens? Okay, so you can see that from producer block to the consumer block, only 4 messages can be handled, and after that it will stop receiving any more messages. If I just do this and run this, let's see what result do I get. So here it is interesting, it prints hello TPL with the consumer got 4 messages, and that's it. Our workflow really never completed here in terms of the consumer block completion and all that. So that is actually a little bit harder to grasp, and it can be problematic, and you may have to fix this manually. But besides this, I wanted to show you an example where I add another consumer block. So I'm just going to copy this and I'm going to say consumer 2 block, and let's just name it consumer 2. So we have one consumer, the second consumer, and I'm also going to link this producer block to the consumer 2. So let's just do this. And let me forward the document, and it's called consumer 2 block. So let's just do this, and I'm not really going to specify max messages or anything in this consumer 2. So let's just get rid of that. So here you can see I've added a consumer 2 block, which is also chained to the producer block. And I'm going to write the same kind of continuation for it. So let me just copy it and write the continuation here and format this so it's easy for you to see. And here is going to be consumer 2 block, and it's going to be consumer 2. And let's say if I did this, what happens? As you might notice that the consumer, the link for the first consumer still has max messages as 4. So let me just clear this screen here and run this again. Here, so now it's pretty interesting. So you can see consumer 1 still got only 4 messages, 0, 1, and 2 and 3, but all the other messages after that went to the consumer 2 block, which didn't have any max message limits. So as you can see, the way this LinkTo is working is it'll try to give messages to consumer block, but this block is not accepting it anymore. So it'll start sending those messages to the other block that might be connected to its output. So as you can see, it gets through all of this. And here you can see the consumer 2 is also done, which is what we expect consumer 2. And also you already know the consumer 1 is essentially in a faulted state and cannot really go through a done information. So you have to kind of figure it out. At least I am not sure how to do this, but in some kind of an external way. So that's pretty much what I wanted to cover for today. And thank you for watching this short screencast. And I'm going to add this video to my website, and I will add it under the TPL. So I'll add it as TPL Dataflow LinkTo. And thank you for watching this short screencast, and you have a great day.